My 13-year-old niece grinned. Mom says you're just a side character in our lives. While unboxing the $850 phone I bought her, the room burst into laughter. Except me. I nodded, stood up, and with 2 taps, cut off every payment tied to their lives. That night, I packed one bag, disappeared, and left behind a folder marked, "Let's see who matters now." They say blood is thicker than water. But let me tell you, sometimes that blood can feel like a suffocating tide, pulling you under until you can barely breathe. For years, I drowned in it, blindly giving everything until one day, in a room full of laughing faces, I finally snapped. My name is Jake. I'm 32, and for most of my adult life, I was a family's ATM, their fixer, their unspoken designated provider. Birthdays? I'm picking up the tab. Holidays? I'm buying the ham, the wine, whatever else we somehow forgot. Car trouble? Ask Jake, he's good with money. I was the unmarried uncle, software job, no kids, and a seemingly endless well of time and generosity. Or at least, that's how they always framed it. And for a long time, I just let them. I played my part, the background character, the silent support unit. It's not that I didn't love them. I did, fiercely. I just thought that was what family was, unbalanced, held together by duty. My sister, Mandy, 2 years younger than me, was the undisputed star. Loud, charming, effortlessly manipulative in a way people mistook for charisma. She married young, had 2 kids by her mid-20s, and divorced just in time to move back in with Mom and Dad. That was 8 years ago. And somehow, in all that time, I never questioned how the spotlight shifted entirely onto her and her kids, Nina and Mason. It was like I'd aged out of relevance the moment they walked back into the house. I was the one who gave up my old room, crashing the basement when I visited for holidays. I never complained when Nina needed a new phone, or Mason wanted tickets to a basketball game. I just paid, quietly, even gladly at first. It felt good to be useful, necessary. I grew up believing love meant sacrifice, that you proved your worth by giving time, money, energy. So I gave and gave and gave. Then things started to shift. It was around Nina's 10th birthday. I remember it so vividly. I had gone all out. A custom cake, the newest tablet she'd been hinting about for months. Decorations themed around some pop star I couldn't even pronounce. When I handed her the wrap box, she barely looked up from her phone. "Didn't Uncle Jake already give me one of these last year?" she muttered, not even joking. Mandy laughed like it was the cutest thing she'd ever heard. "She's just used to being spoiled," she said, patting my shoulder. "You've set the bar too high, big bro." That was the first time I felt it. A cold, brief flicker behind my ribs. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a kind of hollowing. A feeling like maybe I wasn't giving because I wanted to, but because I'd been assigned a role, and nobody was checking if I still wanted the part. Still, I brushed it off. Kids are kids, I told myself. What's a little ingratitude? But the comments got sharper as the years passed. Mason, now 15, started calling me tech support like it was my actual name. "Hey, tech support," he'd yell across the room. "Wi-Fi's down again." Or, "Fix the TV before Mom gets mad." Mandy never corrected him. Mom didn't either. Dad was too tired to notice. And I just did what I was told, like always. The worst part was how natural it became. Like I wasn't Jake anymore. Not really. I was just a guy who picked up the check, who drove Nina to her art lessons when Mandy was too hungover from book club, who patched the leaky bathroom faucet, without being asked. I told myself it was fine, that they needed me, that I mattered. Then came Nina's 13th birthday. It was a Friday. I'd taken a day off work, driven 2 hours out the house with a wrap box in the back seat, and a pit in my stomach I couldn't explain. The gift was expensive, an $850 phone, the one she'd been begging for. Mandy had ranted endlessly about how these new phones were a scam, but not once did she say, "Don't buy it." In fact, she'd sent me a screenshot of the exact model, down to the color. The party was already in full swing when I got there. Balloons, music, half the neighborhood kids running through the yard. I found Mandy in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, barking instructions at our mom like she was hired catering staff. "Hey, look who finally showed up," she slurred when she saw me. "Santa Jake." I faked a smile. Got caught in traffic. "Oh, no worries. You can still be the hero," she winked. "Nina is about to open your present." "Hero, right?" I followed the noise into the living room where Nina sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes and glittery wrapping paper. Mason was filming on his phone. "Okay." Mandy clapped her hands loudly. Now for the big one from your favorite uncle. Everyone turned toward me. Phone's out, I said, holding out the box with a stiff smile. Nina tore it open with dramatic flair. Oh my gosh, she squealed, holding up the phone like she'd just been handed a crown. This is the exact one I wanted. A cheer went up around the room. Applause. Mason whistled. Mandy beamed like she'd bought it herself. Then Nina said it. She held the phone in one hand, smirking at me with a kind of lazy amusement that felt older than 13. Mom says, you're just a background character in our lives, she said sweetly. But thank you for the phone, though. The room erupted in laughter. Even Mason doubled over. Mandy covered her mouth, like she was trying not to laugh too hard. And I swear to you, Mom chuckled. Not loud, but it was there, that polite, guilty giggle people do when they don't want to cause a scene. I just stood there, the empty box still warm in my hand from where I'd held it. Laughter all around me like static. Something inside me went very, very quiet. I nodded once, slowly. I didn't say another word, just reached into my back pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen twice. The laughter dimmed. Mason stopped filming. Mandy squinted. Jake! But I'd already turned away. That night, I packed a single bag. Just the essentials: clothes, laptop, passport. I left behind a key to the house and a manila folder on the dining table, labeled in thick black marker, "Let's see who matters now." I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even check the group chat. I just vanished. And here's where things started to get interesting. It wasn't like I planned to cut them off that night. I didn't storm out with some grand, rehearsed vengeance in mind. I just left quietly. For the first time in my life, I decided not to fix things, not to stay, not to be the one who smoothed it all over. I checked into a modest little Airbnb an hour away. Nothing fancy, just quiet. I turned off my notifications, and I sat with myself for the first time in what felt like years. No family group texts. No Mason asking for in-game currency. No Mandy forwarding bills with vague notes like, "Can you cover this till next week?" No Mom guilt-tripping me with lines like, "But Jake, you know they're going through a rough time." Silence. Actual silence. It was only then I realized how loud my life had been, not in volume, but in weight, in expectation. The first messages trickled in around 10 p.m. Mandy. Haha, okay. Seriously, where'd you go? Wait, did you shut off Nina's phone? It says no service or something. Then a flood. Mom, Jake, this isn't funny. Mandy's in tears. Call me. Mandy again. Are you serious right now? You canceled my card. I was literally buying groceries. Followed by a series of calls. I didn't answer any of them. And when the first knock hit the Airbnb door the next morning, probably Mandy or Mom trying to talk sense into me, I didn't open it. I just watched the car leave from the upstairs window, coffee in hand, like a ghost haunting his own story. Over the next week, things unraveled fast. I hadn't realized just how much I'd been propping up behind the scenes. Not just buying birthday gifts or fixing leaky sinks. No, I'd been paying Mandy's car insurance, Mom's dental plan, Mason's gaming subscriptions, the family Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus bundles. I co-signed a lease on Mandy's current car. The utilities of the house were in my name because Jake's credit score is amazing and we'll get better rates. They never once asked me to remove my name. They just forgot it was mine. And when all that support vanished in a couple taps, it didn't just inconvenience them. It exposed them. The real turning point wasn't the birthday. That was just the crack. The real fracture came 3 weeks later when Mandy texted me this. "Look, I get that you're hurt or whatever, but can you please just Venmo $400 so I can pay the electric? We're literally in the dark right now." And when I didn't respond, she sent another one. "Fine, be a petty loser. I'm just going to tell everyone how toxic you've been behind the scenes. People will see who you really are." That one hit differently. Not because I was scared of her lies, but because for the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as my little sister. Not as the single mom doing her best. But as someone who only saw me as useful when I was giving. That night, I took a long walk. Fog hung low over the lake behind the Airbnb. The air had that early spring chill to it, biting just enough to make me feel alive. I thought about Dad, about how quiet he'd become these past few years. Always watching Mandy with tired eyes, but never speaking up. I remembered once, maybe 5 years back, we were out in the garage fixing a busted lawnmower, and he'd said under his breath, "You're too good to them, you know." I'd laughed, thinking he meant it as a compliment, but Maybe it was a warning. I didn't respond to Mandy. I didn't Venmo her anything. Instead, I logged into the shared family account I'd set up years ago, back when I naively thought bundling our finances made us closer, and removed every saved payment method. Then I disabled all auto payments I'd set up under my name. Cell plans, car insurance, streaming services, even the online grocery delivery I'd been secretly funding for months. I knew it was coming, and I was right. 2 days later, I got a call from my cousin Jen. She's one of the few relatives I actually respect. Level-headed, no drama. She opened with, "Hey, are you okay? I just talked to Aunt Marlene, and she said Mandy's been telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown." I sighed. Not a breakdown, just a realization. Jen snorted. "Yeah, I figured. She also said you emptied her savings account." "What savings account?" I asked flatly. "She's had a negative balance for 3 months." Jen paused. "Oh." And just like that, the narrative Mandy was spinning started to fray. The betrayal came soon after. It was a Sunday. I was just starting to relax, genuinely relax, when a friend from work forwarded me a screenshot. It was from Facebook. Mandy had posted a long, tear-streaked rant about family betrayal and a certain someone who abandoned his niece after buy her a gift just to manipulate her. She didn't use my name, but the comments made it clear. One from my aunt. "So sorry, honey. Jake always seemed after me." Another from someone I didn't even know. "You and the kids deserve better. Some people use money to feel powerful." But the worst was Mom's comment. "We've always tried to be patient with him. Some people just don't know how to be part of a family." That one punched me in the throat. My own mother, the woman I helped out of debt 3 times, who I visited every other weekend, even when work was insane, who I took to her doctor's appointments when she couldn't drive, who cried to me the night Dad's health took a turn, and I held her hand the entire night. That woman saying she had to be patient with me like I was the burden, the inconvenience, the unstable one. I felt something in me fracture. Not in anger, not in grief, but something deeper. A clean, cold break. I didn't call them out. I didn't comment. I didn't post a rebuttal. But I did start gathering things. Receipts, bank statements, screenshots. Every transfer I'd made, every bill I'd paid, every subscription under my name, every Venmo, every just a little help till Friday, every emailed, "Thank you so much, Jake. You're a lifesaver." And I compiled it all into a document, 57 pages long. The title page, background character, a record of every time I carried this family. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I waited. I wanted to see just how far they'd go. And they didn't disappoint. 1 week later, I got served actual legal papers. Mandy was suing me for financial manipulation, emotional distress, and abandonment of minor dependents. She claimed I'd established a financial dependency for years and then weaponized my withdrawal to cause deliberate emotional and economic harm. I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through the paperwork, actually laughing, not because it was funny, but because it was so far beyond delusional. It stopped being sad. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just dysfunction. This was war. And I was done being the nice guy, the background character. Fine. Time for the background character to rewrite the script. But before I did that, I had to tie up one final thread. The one person I hadn't spoken to since I left. Dad. Because something told me he knew more than he let on. Something in the way he used to watch Mandy. The way he always looked a little guilty when I paid for dinner. I needed answers. So I drove back to the old house late at night. No calls, no warning. Just me and the wind, and a folder full of receipts in the passenger seat. And when I knocked on the back door, it was Dad who answered. Not with surprise, not even with relief, but with a look that said, "Took you long enough." And then he said something I'll never forget. "They've been planning this for a while, Jake." I stared at him. "What?" He stepped aside, letting me in. "Come sit down. There's something I need to show you." That's when he led me to the attic. And what I found there changed everything. The attic hadn't changed since I was a teenager. Same smell of dust and insulation. Same crooked floorboards and low ceiling you had to duck under. I used to come up here to escape from school, from noise, from Mandy's screaming tantrums when we were kids. It was my hideout, my sanctuary. I hadn't set foot up there in over a decade. Dad moved slowly, not from age, but from weariness. He seemed older than I remembered, smaller somehow. When we got to the back corner of the attic, he crouched and pulled aside a faded tarp. Underneath was an old filing cabinet I hadn't seen since I was maybe 16. It was dented, rusted at the corners, and humming with secrets. He didn't speak at first, just unlocked the top drawer with a tiny silver key on his keyring. "You remember when Mandy moved back in?" he asked, not looking at me. "Of course," I said, "right after the divorce." He nodded. "That was when your mom and I started pulling these." He pulled out a thick stack of manila envelopes. Bills, printed emails, statements. I stepped closer, and my eyes caught the details. Credit cards open under my name. Auto loans Mandy had defaulted on. Purchase receipts for items I'd never seen. Jewelry, spa trips, even a vacation to Key West. All tagged to a card that traced back to my account. "What is this?" I asked slowly, my voice hollow. He finally looked at me. There was pain in his eyes. "Shame. I didn't know at first," he said. "Your mother handled the bills. Mandy needed help. And, well, you were always giving. It was easy for her to justify." I didn't speak. I couldn't. I felt like I was underwater, lungs burning, pressure building in my skull. "She took out a card in your name, Jake," he said gently. "Back when you were 25. That's how it started. Just one. Then she added your info to hers. Insurance, streaming accounts, everything. And when you started sending her money voluntarily, well, it all blended together. She figured you wouldn't notice." I couldn't breathe. "All those late fees," he added. "The ones we blame on your mother being forgetful. Those were Mandy." I sat down hard. The wooden floor creaked beneath me. My head spun. I wasn't just a background character. I was a foundation. And they'd been standing on my back for years. "You knew," I said quietly. "You've known." He didn't deny it. "I found out 3 years ago after your mother had her surgery. Mandy was juggling accounts, moving money around, and I started getting mail addressed to you. Final notices, collection threats. I confronted her. She cried, said she'd tell you herself. Of course she didn't." "No," he admitted, "and I didn't push. I figured maybe it would all balance out, that maybe she'd stop. But she didn't, and now this." I laughed, not a real laugh, a broken, bitter thing. "She's suing me, Dad. After everything." He winced. "I know." I looked at him, really looked. "And Mom." He hesitated. She knew earlier than I did, but she convinced herself it was harmless. That Mandy was just struggling. "And you had more than enough." I felt something in me snap, not in anger, in clarity. They weren't just using me. They believed they were entitled to it. The drive back to my Airbnb was silent. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on asphalt and my own pulse in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the steering wheel or throw my phone. I just felt empty. That was rock bottom. Not the betrayal, not the debt, not even the lawsuit. It was a realization that I had been raised to think this was love. That my role in the family was not son or brother or uncle, but provider, fixer, financier. And that the moment I stopped performing, I stopped mattering. I spent the next week in a fog, ignoring calls, watching mindless TV, walking in circles around the lake. I didn't eat much, didn't sleep much either. But slowly, something started to shift. I started journaling, not in some Dear Diary way, just bullet points, thoughts, fragments. Times I felt taken advantage of, moments I brushed things off that hurt me, patterns I never acknowledged. One entry stood out. Mandy called me just a background character and thought it was funny. Maybe she was right, but the background character always sees everything and he gets to walk away. Another, they only miss me when I'm useful. That's not family. That's employment without pay. And another from a late night walk. I don't owe anyone my silence anymore. That was the first step up. The second came from an unexpected place. A message request on LinkedIn. A recruiter for a tech startup. They'd seen some of my older dev projects on GitHub and asked if I was available for contract work. Normally, I'd say no. I already had a stable job, good benefits. But something in me said, why not? I took the call. Then the gig. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. The contract became full-time. Then they offered equity. Then a relocation package. It was like the universe was waiting for me to stop bleeding for everyone else, so it could finally give me something. I moved out of the Airbnb and into a small loft downtown. Clean, minimalist, quiet. Every object in it was mine, paid for by me. No shared bills, no entitled family, no guilt. I bought a new phone, changed my number, kept the old one active for one reason only: evidence. Because I hadn't forgotten the lawsuit that was still coming, and with it, my reckoning. But before I faced it, I had to finish rebuilding myself. I started going to therapy, first virtual, then in person. I told the therapist everything. The years of people-pleasing, the manipulation, the financial codependency disguised as loyalty. She said something I still carry with me. You didn't abandon your family. You stopped abandoning yourself. That line became a compass. I reconnected with friends I ghosted over the years. People I used to be close with before every holiday, weekend, and spare dollar got sucked into the family vortex. We got drinks, laughed. One of them hugged me and said, "Man, it's so good to see you again." And that's when I realized I was coming back. Not Jake the provider. Not Uncle Jake with the deep pockets. Just Jake. Me, the person who loved quietly, gave freely, and asked for nothing until he finally learned to ask for space. The real Jake. The one they never bothered to know. I started writing more. Stories, essays, even a blog. Anonymously. At first, I wrote about burnout, about financial boundaries, about being a fixer in dysfunctional families. One post went viral, shared by a finance influencer who said, "This is what generational guilt looks like in dollars." And slowly people began reaching out, strangers, followers, other background characters who finally saw themselves in someone else's words. That gave me purpose, a voice, and it gave me the final push I needed, because the court date was coming. Mandy hadn't dropped a lawsuit, and I was done playing defense. I was ready to speak, to show them, but not just in court. No, I had something else planned first, something they never saw coming. And it started with that 57-page document. The 57-page document I had spent weeks assembling wasn't just a stack of receipts. It was a story, a timeline, a map of my slow erosion at the hands of my own family. Every Venmo transfer, every credit card transaction, every text that began with, "Hey, can you help me out?" It was all there. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was factual, cold, precise, with dates, screenshots, and bank records to back it up. But that alone wouldn't be enough. Mandy wasn't stupid, just reckless. She'd lawyered up the moment she filed her claim. I knew her strategy: make me look unstable, manipulative, vindictive, paint the image of a lonely, childless brother who used money to control people and then lashed out when they didn't worship him. She was leaning on sympathy, emotional optics, and family loyalty. And worst of all, she had Mom on her side, ready to say whatever it took to protect her daughter. I couldn't fight that with logic alone. I needed leverage, not just proof, but a narrative that cut through the noise. So I called Jen. Jen, my cousin, had always been different. While Mandy was busy being the golden child, Jen was the one person who saw through the glass. She'd grown up closer to me than to Mandy, and in college, we'd been each other's emergency contact. She knew things, remembered things. She was also now a junior paralegal at a mid-sized firm in our state. And more importantly, someone who still had access to a few favors. She picked up on the first ring. "Jake." Her voice was cautious, but warm. "Please tell me this is about blowing everything up. I've been waiting." I smiled for the first time in days. "Close. I need your help." Quietly. We met 2 days later at a diner halfway between our cities. I slid the folder across the table. She didn't speak for 10 minutes, just flipped page by page, her expression unreadable. Then she closed it and leaned back. "This is more than enough to countersue for fraud. I'm not interested in dragging it out," I said. "I just want it to stop." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? Because this is blood-in-the-water stuff. You could bury her, like, no metaphor. Bury her." I thought about it, about the years, the sacrifices. The way Mom had commented on Mandy's Facebook post like I was the unstable one. "I'm not looking for drama," I said carefully, "but I am going to make sure they never pull this on me or anyone else again." Jen tapped her fingers against a ceramic coffee mug. "Then we play it quiet. No scorched earth. Not yet, but we prepare for it anyway, just in case." I nodded. Over the next week, we built the foundation of a counter case. Fraudulent use of identity, financial manipulation, long-term coerced dependency. Jen even pulled an angle I hadn't considered. False claims to shared ownership of my finances. Mandy had once told people I was basically co-parenting her kids with her. Turns out that statement had legal implications when paired with her lawsuit. But the real gold came from Dad. One night, he called me. "I was thinking," he said cautiously. "I still have access to the old desktop in the basement. That's the one Mandy used when she first moved back in. I never wiped it. If you want, there might be something on it." There was. Emails, years of them. Messages from Mandy to Mom complaining about me, mocking me, plotting. One from 4 years ago where she literally wrote, "I'll just gild him like always. He caves faster than wet cardboard." Another where she said, "If Jake ever cuts us off, I'll say he's unstable. That'll shut him up." But the worst wasn't even about me. It was about her kids. One email said, "Nina's not even grateful. She doesn't deserve that phone Jake bought her. Honestly, I wish I'd return it for cash." Another, "Mason's therapy bill came in. Forward it to Jake and tell him it's urgent or something. He always folds when it's about the kids." I printed them, all of them, but I still wasn't done. I wanted something more personal, something to twist a knife, not out of spite, but out of truth. So I did something risky. I reached out to Mason. The kid had always been a bit of a brat, but he wasn't cruel, not like his sister. And unlike Mandy, he was old enough to understand consequences. I texted him a simple message. "Hey, Mason, just wanted to say I miss hanging out. Hope you're okay. I'd like to talk sometime. Just you and me. No lawyers, no drama." He responded an hour later. "I didn't know Mom was suing you. That's messed up." We met at a park near his school. He looked older, more tired. He sat on the bench beside me, arms crossed. "You okay?" I asked. He shrugged. "Things suck at home. Mom's freaking out. Grandma's trying to pretend everything's fine, but she keeps whispering about you. Nina's grounded because she threw a fit about not having Wi-Fi." I nodded. "I wanted to see you because I needed to hear something from you directly." He turned to me. "What? That day?" "Nina's birthday. When she said that thing about me being the background character. Did your mom tell her to say that?" He looked down at his hands, picked at his nails, then nodded slowly. "She thought it would be funny, like a joke. But Nina didn't get it was mean." My chest tightened. "She even told her to smile after," Mason added. "Said it would make it less harsh." I thanked him, bought him lunch, and as we sat there eating burgers, he looked up and said, "I don't think you're a background character. I think you were the only one actually doing stuff." That hit harder than he knew. I filed everything away. Emails, screenshots, statements, even Mason's testimony, which Jen advised to document in writing and have notarized, just in case. And then I waited. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, I did something bold. I sent Mom a letter, handwritten, no accusations, no defenses, just the truth. I told her what I'd found, what Mandy had said about me, what she'd taken. I told her about the debt, the emails, the years of slow, suffocating extraction. And I ended it with one line. "If you show up in court on her side, I'll consider you a willing accomplice and I'll never speak to you again." She didn't respond. Not directly. But 2 days later, Jen called me. Your mom's lawyer just quit." "What?" She said something about a conflict of interest. My guess? Your mom's reconsidering. That wasn't enough to trust her, but it was enough to know she was scared. And that meant I had power. Real power. I kept building. Quietly behind the scenes. Jen helped me put together a revised financial report, one that outlined not just what I'd paid, but what I'd lost, interest, credit score damage, emotional labor, misinvestment opportunities. It totaled out to over $190,000. And that wasn't even counting what I could have pursued in damages. We drafted a counterclaim. I had it ready, sitting in a folder marked in case of fire. But I had one more move to make, one last ace to slide into the deck. And for that, I needed a little theater. I bought a new suit. Not flashy, just clean, sharp, confident. I booked a hotel room near the courthouse and prepared a separate binder with color-coded tabs. And then I made copies of everything. One for the judge, one for Mandy's lawyer, one for the court clerk, and one for Mandy. The cover was the same as the folder I left on the table when I disappeared. In thick, bold letters, "Let's see who matters now." Inside was everything. Every receipt, every betrayal, every lie, every dollar, every email. And taped to the last page was a photo, a candid from Mason's birthday 2 years ago. Me carrying a giant cake, Mandy laughing, Mom clapping, Nina mid-scream. All of them centered, me blurred in the background. And underneath the photo, I wrote, "I used to be in the background, but I kept all the footage." Then I closed the binder, took a deep breath, and smiled for the first time in months. Because I was ready. And they had no idea what was coming next. The morning of the court hearing was bright, sharp, and silent. Just the kind of atmosphere you'd want before tearing down a dynasty built on guilt and lies. I woke early, got dressed slowly. No rush, no nerves. I knew the binder by heart, knew every receipt, every text, every cruel little quote Mandy thought would never see the light of day. I ate a slow breakfast, then walked a half mile to the courthouse with a calm so deep it startled even me. When I arrived, Jen was already inside, wearing a tailored blazer and a quiet smirk. She handed me a coffee. "Whole circus is here," she said. "Mom, Nina, some guy she's dating now, I think. All here to play the sympathy card." "Good," I said. "Let them watch." We stepped into the courtroom. I saw Mandy immediately, seated at the plaintiff's table. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something with tight lips. She looked irritated, but when her eyes met mine, calm, steady, clean-cut me, walking with no entourage, no panic. Her mouth twitched, just for a second. She hadn't expected this version of me. Mom sat directly behind her, back straight, arms crossed. She avoided my eyes. Mason wasn't there. Smart kid. The judge arrived. Middle-aged, no nonsense, short hair and glasses. The type who'd seen every scam under the sun. She gave us both a once-over before flipping through the preliminary filings. Then Mandy's lawyer stood. She launched into her statement. Emotional, dramatic, bordering on theatrical. "Mr. Jacobs," she began, "has a history of emotionally manipulating this family through monetary gifts and support, creating a dependency he then cruelly withdrew. This has caused significant distress to my client, who..." The judge held up a hand. "I've read the complaint. Let's proceed." Mandy took the stand first. She teared up almost immediately, claimed I created a power imbalance, said I used money by affection, and then punished them when I didn't feel adored enough. She was 13, Your Honor. Mandy said, voice shaking, about Nina, and he just vanished after giving her this expensive phone, and then cutting off her service, her streaming apps, everything. It traumatized her. Jen leaned over and whispered, "I wonder if trauma includes TikTok access being revoked." I had to cover a grin with my hand. Then came my turn. I walked to the stand, binder in hand, calm. No theatrics. I didn't need them. "My sister is not wrong about one thing," I said. "I did support them financially, extensively, willingly, for over a decade. But not once did I ask for repayment. Not once did I use it to control her or anyone else. I never held it over them. In fact, I kept quiet. Too quiet." I handed the judge a copy of the binder, and page by page, we walked through it. The Venmo transfers, the rent payments, the credit cards opened in my name without my permission, the car insurance, the hundreds of grocery bills, utility statements, streaming subscriptions, the time Mandy used my info to sign up for a loan she never paid back. Each one documented. Then came the emails, the ones from the attic desktop. I watched Mandy's face freeze when she saw the printed headers, her name, her words. She was proud of manipulating me. I said, "You'll find one email where she writes, quote, 'He caves faster than wet cardboard.' Another says, 'If Jake ever cuts us off, I'll say he's unstable. That'll shut him up.'" Her lawyer jumped up, objecting. "Irrelevant. Speculative." The judge raised a hand. "I'll allow it. Continue." I went on. I told him about the emails discussing how to weaponize guilt, how Mandy coached Nina to make the background character remark. I didn't need to embellish. Her own words did the work. Then I dropped the final blow. I would also like to present a notarized statement from Mason Jacobs, age 15. A gasp from the gallery. Mandy spun around. "You little..." The judge slammed her gavel. "Control your client." I passed the document to the bailiff. Mason confirms that his mother coached his sister to publicly humiliate me during a birthday party in front of the entire family, that she laughed about it afterward, that she told Nina, quote, "Smile when you say it. It'll sound cute." I paused, let it settle. Then I looked straight at my sister. For years, I let this happen. I told myself it was love. That family means giving without limits. That if I kept quiet, they'd appreciate me. But all it did was teach them I was disposable. I turned to the judge. I didn't cut them off out of spite. I did it out of survival. Silence. The judge looked down, flipping to the binder, frowning deeper with each page. Finally, she closed it and exhaled. "I presided over a lot of messy family disputes," she said slowly. "But rarely do I see something this well documented and damning." She turned to Mandy's lawyer. "Your client's lawsuit is not only baseless, but appears retaliatory in nature. The evidence presented clearly shows a pattern of financial exploitation by Ms. Jacobs against her brother. As such, I am not only dismissing complaint with prejudice, but also referring this case for further review regarding potential identity theft and fraud. Mandy's face went bone white. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am awarding the defendant full reimbursement for legal fees and damages totaling $192,000. Ms. Jacobs has 60 days to arrange payment or face collection proceedings. You could hear a pin drop. Mandy's mouth opened, then closed like a fish gasping for air. Her lawyer touched her shoulder gently, as if to brace her. I stood, collected my things, calm as ever. But before I left, I turned to Mom. She hadn't said a word the entire time. She stared at the floor, lips tight, refusing to meet my gaze. I said nothing, not even goodbye, because she'd already made her choice. Later that night, back in my apartment, I poured myself a drink. Just one. Sat on the balcony and let the city lights blur into amber and gold. The notifications came slowly. Mandy's lawyer dropped her as a client. Nina's school posted a vague privacy reminder to parents after rumors started to swirl. A friend texted me a screenshot of Mandy's Facebook post, taken down within the hour. Her tone had changed. She was suddenly taking a break from social media to focus on family healing. Cute. A week later, I received a cashier's check. Not from Mandy, from her new boyfriend, who I guess realized he'd hitched his wagon to a burning dumpster. The note attached just read, Don't come after me. This covers my part. Smart man. I deposited it the next day. Over the following months, I rebuilt quietly. No fanfare. I traveled, met new people, even started dating again. The peace I felt was real, deep, not just the absence of noise, but the presence of something I'd never truly allowed myself before. Freedom. Mason reached out again. I took him to a baseball game. We talked about school, music, life. He never asked for money, just time. It was the best gift I've been given in years. Eventually, I started writing more. One of my essays about financial boundaries and familial guilt was picked up by a major site. It exploded. People flooded the comments, shared their own stories. Turns out there are a lot of background characters out there. I was just one of the first to walk off the stage. And as for Mandy, last I heard, she was staying with a friend, trying to rebuild. I wish her well, but from a distance. A long one, because I've learned something they never did. Love isn't measured by how much you give. It's measured by who still stands beside you when you stop. And now I stand alone, but I stand tall. Not in the background,